The air was thick with tension, every eye locked on the screen as Mark Levin leaned forward, voice sharp enough to cut through steel. Maybe if she spent less time playing identity politics, she'd know what the Constitution actually says, he sneered, his tone dripping with contempt. A hush fell over the studio. Even the co-host shifted uncomfortably, pretending to shuffle papers. And there, beneath the blinding lights, Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. Her stillness was power, her silence thunder waiting to strike. The moment crackled, charged and electric. But to understand why this clash mattered we need to go back. The debate had begun like any other two opposing minds, one stage, the illusion of civility. But it didn't take long for Mark Levin to turn discourse into demolition. He wrapped his voice in words like respect and decorum, yet every syllable carried a sneer, every sentence a slap masked as principle. The audience felt it, the imbalance, the quiet cruelty that so often hides behind power. And through it all, Jasmine Crockett stayed composed, her posture straight, her voice measured. To some, it looked like restraint, to those who knew better, it was strategy. Her calm wasn't surrender, it was defiance in its purest form. The crowd could sense the tide turning, a shift beneath the surface of the shouting. This wasn't just a clash of opinions, it was a collision between two Americas, one shouting to be heard, the other standing tall to be seen. Millions would later say it felt personal, as if she was standing for everyone who'd ever been talked over, dismissed, or disrespected. The spark had been lit, and the air buzzed with anticipation. But the story of how they got here begins long before that night. For years, Mark Levin built his empire on outrage. Behind a microphone, his voice was fire-loud, absolute, unyielding. He called himself a constitutional purist, the last guardian of American truth, but his broadcasts often blurred into theater, where fury replaced facts and volume stood in for conviction. Clips of his tirades filled the internet, the interruptions, the dismissive laughter, the way he'd turned debate into domination. He wasn't just talking politics, he was performing power. His fans adored it, mistaking aggression for authority. He speaks the truth, they'd chant, as if decibels equaled depth. But those who listened closely could hear something else, a tremor of insecurity, a need to control every conversation before it exposed him. He lectured about freedom while silencing others, preached humility while basking in applause. In one infamous segment, he mocked a young activist's accent, in another, he ridiculed a grieving parent for playing victim. Each time, the ratings spiked. Each time, the mask slipped just a little further. He called it patriotism. Others called it projection. His brand was arrogance polished into ideology, a crusade that fed on conflict. But the night he met Jasmine Crockett, his script stopped working. Because Jasmine was no ordinary opponent and she was about to prove it. Before Congress, Jasmine Crockett fought her battles in crowded courtrooms and community halls where justice was often a whisper against a roar. As a public defender, she stood beside those the system forgot, people without money, influence, or anyone to speak their truth. She didn't chase headlines, she chased fairness. Every case taught her that real strength isn't in how loud you can shout, but how long you can stand your ground. When politics called, she didn't trade conviction for convenience. She carried her grit, her empathy, and her law books into Congress, where she became known for sharp logic and unshakable composure. Colleagues called her fearless, her opponents called her too direct. But those who knew her story understood silence didn't scare her, it centered her. She had seen power at its ugliest and refused to be intimidated by it. So, when the cameras rolled and the lights blazed down on that debate stage, Jasmine Crockett didn't see an adversary, she saw another test of truth. And when she stepped onto that set, she knew exactly what kind of energy she was walking into. The debate opened with forced smiles, the kind that hide sharp edges. Cameras panned across the stage, lights gleaming off polished wood, and the tension hung thick, almost visible. Mark Levin leaned in first, voice booming, slicing through the air with practiced arrogance. He interrupted before Jasmine even finished a sentence, waving his hand dismissively as if swatting away a fly. "That's not how the law works, Congresswoman," he barked, his grin tight, his tone taunting. The host tried to interject, to restore order, but Levin wasn't finished. He rarely was. Each interruption grew bolder, his gestures grander, his condescension louder. The audience shifted uneasily, glances darting between them. Jasmine, still and composed, let the storm rage. Every barb, every smirk, every loaded word stacked higher, building a wall of noise he mistook for dominance. But beneath that noise, she was waiting/calculating. The cameras caught her expression, calm, steady, almost serene. A contrast so sharp it silenced the background chatter. The host's voice cracked trying to break through, but by now the debate had lost its shape. It wasn't conversation anymore, it was spectacle. And yet, through it all, she never lost her poise. The pressure mounted. The world leaned closer. And then, in a moment that froze the entire room, she finally spoke. When Jasmine finally spoke, the room fell still. Her tone was steady, deliberate, blade wrapped in velvet. "You speak of the Constitution," she began, her eyes locked on Levin, "but somehow you forget that it protects more than just your comfort." The words landed clean, precise. Levin shifted in his seat, the smirk fading as she continued. She dismantled his points one by one, turning his own rhetoric against him. "You say respect is earned," she said, pausing just long enough for the silence to thicken, "but what you mean is obedience." Each pause stretched like a held breath. Every sentence drew the line between conviction and cruelty. Levin tried to interrupt, she didn't let him. A simple glance silenced him, and the camera caught it, the moment his dominance cracked. "I was taught," she said softly, "that the loudest man in the room is often the least certain." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. The truth did all the shouting. The host sat speechless. A producer mouthed, "Wow." Within minutes, Twitter exploded. #Crockett clapback blazed across screens, clips flooded timelines. What started as a debate had become a reckoning. But the real storm didn't come from her words, it came from what the nation did next. The clip hit the internet like a lightning strike. Within minutes, timelines split in two, half cheering, half fuming. Hashtags surged, memes spread like wildfire, and everyone seemed to have an opinion. On CNN, analysts called it the most composed takedown of the year. Fox commentators labeled it a meltdown in disguise. TikTok flooded with edits of Crockett's calm stare set to cinematic music, each one more viral than the last. College students quoted her lines in dorm debates, activists replayed her words as rally chants. It wasn't just politics anymore, it was identity, dignity, and defiance colliding in real time. People saw themselves in her, the worker talked over in meetings, the immigrant dismissed at the counter, the woman told to stay calm while being disrespected. For them, her restraint wasn't silence, it was a revolution. And for Levin's defenders, outrage became their armor. The divide widened, but the message was unmistakable: America was watching itself argue about who truly deserved respect. The nation had turned a single exchange into a mirror, and what stared back was uncomfortable, undeniable truth. But even as the applause grew louder, one question remained: what did this moment really mean? In the quiet that followed, something deeper than applause filled the air. Viewers who'd watched expecting fireworks found themselves reflecting instead. Jasmine Crockett hadn't won by shouting, she'd redefined what victory looked like. In an age where volume often drowns reason, she had shown that power isn't in who talks the longest, it's in who stands tallest. Her composure became a statement, her calm an act of rebellion against the chaos that passes for discourse. In an age of outrage, a commentator later wrote, silence can be the loudest answer. And when faced with arrogance, grace isn't weakness, it's mastery. Her response reminded millions that strength wrapped in dignity can change more minds than any insult ever could. It wasn't just a debate anymore, it was a lesson in restraint, courage, and respect. People didn't just share her words, they shared what they felt: hope. Hope that decency could still prevail in a divided country. But this story doesn't end here, because moments like these change careers, and sometimes change history. The morning after, every network had her name in its headlines. Crockett's calm crushes chaos, read one cheerin', another simply said, Grace under fire. Interviews poured in, invitations from shows that once ignored her. For the first time, even critics admitted it had made people listen. Levin, usually quick to defend himself, went uncharacteristically quiet. When he finally spoke, it was defensive, clipped, an echo of the control he'd lost. Meanwhile, the moment took on a life of its own. Social media feeds spun with analysis, gender, race, civility, the state of American discourse. Was dignity now rebellion? Was restraint the new power move? On TikTok, edits of her poised expression looped beneath the words, "Composure wins." On cable news, panels debated what it meant that millions celebrated calm over confrontation. The narrator's voice cut through the montage of headlines and scrolling tweets. It resonated because people were starving for decency. In a time when shouting passes for leadership, authenticity felt radical. What Crockett did wasn't just politicality, was cultural therapy. The nation hadn't just witnessed a takedown, it had witnessed a recalibration of respect. And as America debated online, one truth became impossible to ignore: dignity had just scored a victory on live TV, and so, the story came full circle. Mark Levin crossed the line, and Jasmine Crockett shut him down, not with fury, but with focus. It wasn't a debate to her, it was a demonstration of something bigger. She showed that in a world addicted to outrage, composure can still command a room. What viewers witnessed that night wasn't just political theater, it was a reminder that self-control is strength, and truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. Her response became more than a moment, it became a message. For everyone who's ever been dismissed or disrespected, it was proof that grace can still win. If you believe in standing tall without shouting loud, share this story. Because dignity deserves to go viral. Let this moment echo beyond the headlines and hashtags as a call to rise above the noise and lead with integrity. Music swells. The lights dim. The camera fades to black. And on the screen, one final message appears: truth speaks. The world listens.